My name is Evan Rutter. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni and Parent Engagement at Claremont McKenna, also an alumnus of the college. And it's a thrill to have all of you here with us as we learn about the Saul Center for Student Opportunity and how we engage and support our students in their future, in all things related to their future while at CMC and beyond. This is also part of our Impact CMC programming. For those of you who are volunteers for the college, we have 1,400 of them. This is a traditional on-campus program where we bring our volunteers to meet with our faculty, staff, and students. We obviously cannot do that right now. The college is unfortunately remote and working very hard to return everyone to campus in January. So we've turned everything virtual. So we have 8 one-hour series for our Impact CMC programming, meant to take you all behind the scenes, share important information. Hopefully, for those of you that currently aren't volunteers, you'll become volunteers, whether that's being an alumni interviewer or, of course, someone who's an ambassador for the college in some capacity. And today, of course, with the Saul Center for Student Opportunity. A few things about Zoom protocols before we get going. At the bottom, you'll see both a chat feature and a participant button at the bottom of Zoom. If you click those, to the right will open 2 boxes. One is a chat, and you'll see everyone putting in their name and their class year and their location. You can also put questions in there, comments in there. We do save the chat. So if at any time you want to share some information, share a link, feel free to throw something in the chat. When we hit the Q&A portion, we'll also follow up with questions that are in the chat as well. In the participant section, you can see who all is here pretty easily. You can also virtually raise your hand in the participant section. So if you want to ask a question directly to our presenters today, go ahead and click raise hand. We'll call on you and you can speak directly to them. You can also rename yourself there if your name isn't exactly right. Finally, depending on how you want to view this program, you can select gallery view or speaker view in the very top right. Gallery view lets you see a bunch of different people. That's how I like to view Zoom. I like to see 20, 30, 40 people. I love all the faces and all the names. If you want to see gallery view, just the primary person talking, which is me right now, so you would just see me as the majority of your screen. Go ahead and click speaker view. We are going to be sharing screen at some point for the presentation from the Saul Center for Student Opportunity. So know that your screen will change, but we'll go back to gallery or speaker view when we are ready for the Q&A portion and conversation. So like I said, we do request lots of questions, comments. We'd like this to be as interactive as possible. There'll be a polling option pretty soon where you can select responses to some questions, which will help us kind of structure the conversation a little bit as well. So welcome everyone. Today, we're talking about confronting challenges, how volunteers, all of you, are the secret sauce of successful student outcomes. In these uncertain times, internships, full-time roles, and graduate school admission are top of mind for our students. Today, we welcome the director of the Robert Day Scholars Program and Scholar Communities, Beth Milev, class of 05, and director for Student Opportunity, Ursula Diamond, along with current students, to learn how the center supports career exploration and the vital role that volunteers play in this important work. After philanthropy, the Saul Center for Student Opportunity has probably the most alumni and parents engaged in the work that they do. There are about 500 alumni and parents who offer job shadow, internship, job opportunities, and volunteer to be experts in residence and more. So excited to have all of you learning about this today, and I'm turning it over to Ursula Diamond, Director of Student Opportunities, to take it from here. Ursula, thanks and welcome.
So thank you very much, Evan. Hopefully everybody can see my slides. My name is Ursula Diamond. And for those of you who don't know, as Evan said, I'm the Director of Student Opportunities at CMC. That means I run career services as well as the sponsored internships and experiences program. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to learn about how you can help support our students both explore and pursue their career and grad school goals. So I thought before we start, it might be helpful for me just to remind you about the way that we are structured in career services. We use an interest cluster model. So rather than advising students based on their major, we focus more on what are their future goals, their industries that they would like to explore, the grad school programs that they would like to investigate. And so we are clustered around these industry groupings, and you'll see that there are 8 core industries that CMCers tend to be particularly enthusiastic about exploring and going into. There are many others, of course, but also grad school education is very important too. So, you know, 2020 has been a weird year. It's caused all of us to re-examine our goals and ways of doing things, and career services is no different. So this summer and going into the fall, we have really changed up the key goals that we're focusing on in career services. And so I just want to quickly run you through these four. The first goal is launching a cohort coaching program within each class year. So what does that mean? It means that we would like to individually connect with every single student, 100% of each class. And we're making great progress there. Since the end of August, we've already connected with over 1/3 of all of our first years, half of all of our sophomore and juniors, and over 2/3 of all of our seniors. Second goal, obviously moving all of our programming for the academic year to a virtual format. And it's been really interesting how relatively smooth that process has been, actually. Virtual appointments and drop-ins, lots of skills workshops that allow students to build cohorts and communities, particularly for first-year students who need that community building right now. We've held our first virtual career fair, and we're right in the middle of a brand new program where we've taken what would normally be a in-person job shadow program, and we converted it to Job Shadow Fridays. So every Friday afternoon, students get to meet with an alum or a parent twice every Friday afternoon on lots of different topics and career paths. And we've had some really good take up on that from our students. And then finally, we are converting all of our physical networking treks, or networking treks that we do every year. We're continuing with every single one of them, but we're turning them all into an online format and taking full advantage of the fact that we can pull in now people from all different geographies in a way that we never used to be able to. The third goal and the fourth goal are really the ones where we're going to be focusing today. So our third goal is to proactively work with alumni and parents to create more internship, micro-internship, and full-time opportunities. And then the fourth goal, to develop ways to connect alumni and parents with students to help them navigate the current climate. So, as I said, these are the two areas that we're going to be focusing on today. We are going to really appreciate any input you can provide as we go in the chat box with questions, comments, opportunities to volunteer. And so Beth is going to be coming up next in terms of referring to opportunities, and then I will finish up with providing advice and connections. So I would love to hand over to Beth at this point to introduce herself and talk a little bit about the challenges we face with opportunities.
Great, thanks, Ursula. As Evan mentioned, I'm a 2005 CMC alumna and director of the Robert Day Scholars Program and Scholar Communities at CMC, and one of the co-leaders of the Saul Center for Student Opportunity. And so today I want to spend some time touching on what we're seeing in the current recruiting environment, both from an employer and student perspective. So since March, we've been in really close contact with all of our campus recruiting partners, our alumni recruiting partners, and also have been very intentional, like Ursula mentioned, talking to our students, figuring out what's going on, what challenges they're facing. And through this, we've seen three distinct trends emerge. The first is we're really grateful that summer 2020 was as good as it was. We did see most of our opportunities move to a virtual format. We did see some opportunities become condensed internships, but for the most part, we didn't see a ton of opportunities fall away for students. The internships that they had acquired earlier in the year, the full-time opportunities remain strong, and we've continued to see that heading into the fall as well. As we're in fall, what we're seeing is that an increased demand for students who are looking to take on in-semester internships. We think that they've got more free time on their hands because they're not on campus, they're not in the normal club activities that they would have been on campus. And because internships are virtual and they're not trying to commute into LA, there are more options for our students to pursue the fall or in-semester internships. And then lastly, what we're seeing from a full-time recruiting standpoint is still a good amount of opportunities, and recruiting is proceeding pretty close to normal numbers. We are seeing two areas that are presenting challenges though. The consulting firms in particular, when COVID sort of took over in March, we saw a lot of the consulting firms push back their start dates for the class of 2020 into 2021. And so what this has done has created less of a need for the class of 2021 who's currently recruiting. So there are less full-time opportunities available in consulting right now, but we are seeing internship recruiting for summer 21 proceeding as normal. And then the other challenge we're seeing is for our international students. The visa landscape had been tightening up over the last couple years, and it had become increasingly harder for our international students to identify roles in the US. And with COVID and with students being out of the country, it's exacerbated this challenge. So while we're grateful that not a ton of recruiting has been impacted, we're always looking for additional ways to support our students. And that's where you all come in. And we're so grateful that you've chosen to spend this hour with us today. We've seen so much support from our alumni community over the last 6 months and wanted to just highlight some additional ways that we can continue to work together. So the first one, fairly obvious, opportunities. If you are hiring, if your department is hiring, if your company is hiring, let us know. You can email myself or Ursula and we'll get them to the right people on our teams. The second way would be just any new recruiting relationships. So if you are aware of anyone in your professional networks that hire entry-level talent, or if you'd like to make an introduction to your human resources departments or other hiring managers, we'd love to get the ball rolling and share all of the ways that we can partner in recruiting activities with those firms. And then I wanted to highlight that we're also working with the CMC Alumni Association's on-campus committee to develop ways to get our alumni a little bit more involved in the awareness and education and hopefully the placement of students in specific industries where we don't have as many formal recruiting relationships. And Ursula will touch on this later in the presentation, but those would be healthcare, science, public policy, and creative and entertainment roles. So if this is you, please drop us a note in the chat or send us an email directly. We'd love to hear from you. These are just a few of the ideas that we've thought through so far, but would love for you to put additional ideas in the chat to get the ball rolling on some of these. Back to you, Ursula.
I'm actually, I would love to, for anybody who has any thoughts about the opportunities and where there could be more that we could be doing, ideas that you might have based on your experience in your particular industry, or if you're a parent with your child in terms of what they're struggling with, we would love to hear some of these thoughts, comments, ideas, to be able to share that.
So everyone, go ahead and put anything you're thinking into the chat. I think it's important to note that all of these items that we're talking about really are supported by our alumni and our parent community. I'm so thrilled that the Alumni Association on Campus Committee is working on full employment, and then the Parent Network Board's Career Services Committee has been unbelievably supportive and passionate about making sure parents are sharing all of their experiences as well. So a big thanks to everybody, but whether it's job shadowing, internship opportunities, I know you mentioned networking treks, Ursula, and we're gonna need, virtual worlds, so many people to show up to those, and we're working on how do we have an interactive component where alumni and parents can meet students one-on-one virtually. So very interesting how we're going about this semester, and definitely plug anyone who's curious about helping if they have anything to add, suggestions, job opportunities, willing to take on a student, to put that in the chat now, and we'll of course follow up later.
In fact, I just came off a wonderful call with the PNB Careers Committee, and we were talking about this exact topic. I know a couple of them are on the call right now, thinking about how they can be helpful in doing outreach to parents in particular, who often are working in some of these fields that we are, where we feel the biggest gaps, for example, science, medicine, areas like that. So Evan, let me know if there's anything coming through in the chat or if you'd like me to keep going.
Nicole just posted someone who can help. We'll follow up with Nicole at some point. A question came in about, you'd mentioned science, Ursula, and I think there's some issues with consulting. How are we doing, especially in the COVID era, with science and medicine and maybe biotech and that kind of recruiting area?
So for a number of months, a number of the usual opportunities that students would be pursuing in the summer dried up because they are normally in-person experiences in a hospital, in a professor's lab, at a college or university. So anything that required in-person testing or access to materials was severely jeopardized. Most of those labs closed down, went virtual, or they had funding suspended for a little while. And then from the hospital's perspective, they were just not willing to bring on new volunteers or new interns at that point because of the health concerns and all hands to the pump. So starting to see a few of those operations starting to open back up again. I'm hearing of professors' labs starting to reopen and virtual teams starting to come back together using very precise protocols. But I would say it has always been a challenging area for our students to find great research opportunities, science opportunities, medicine, clinical experiences. And it has been particularly challenging this year. So that is an area where it would definitely be incredibly helpful to our students who are really trying to not lose time, where they may lose a whole summer or a semester because they were unable to work in an area, gain experience that they were hoping to gain during that period.
Great. And then you talked about consulting briefly, I think Beth, so I'm not sure if this is a question for Beth or for Ursula. CMC obviously has a lot of consultants. A lot of students go into some of the big consulting firms and small ones as well. What do we expect our students who are class of 21 will need to get consulting roles either in the summer after graduation, or will they have to wait until 22 to actually get that role? So what are we kind of seeing and what are we hoping to triage there?
Yeah, you, Evan, were referencing the class of 2021.
The class of 2020 moving to 21 for the hiring cycle, and then what are we doing with this current senior class?
Yeah, so it's really tricky. So the class of 2020, a lot of them had start dates bumped into 2021. So January, February. So that really negates kind of this hiring need for a new class in for our 2021 grads. So I don't, it's tricky. I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that there's going to be plenty of opportunities if we just wait 6 months, because the recruiting firms do hire on cycles and they don't tend to bring in one-off hires. They tend to hire classes of consultants. And so I don't know if I have a great answer for that other than continue to go out and challenge yourself and build your skill set, and hopefully opportunities will open up down the road for more experienced hires in the consulting firms. And there's lots of other work out there besides consulting.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, what are you seeing as perhaps an upward trend this year? So, obviously it may be a bit of a downward trend with consulting, but government, nonprofit, has that increased, or is biotech increasing? Is technology increasing? Like where sometimes we see shifts, where are we seeing that shift, if at all?
So I would say in terms of opportunities, data analysis is always a very hot topic in terms of any kind of business analysis skills, ways in which they can use that amazing economics degree in multiple different ways, so like applied finance type roles. And in terms of, as you said, on the biotech side, that tends to be a steady stream. And for those organizations that are hiring, so big tech is increasing in size, biotech is increasing in size, anything where you're reading in the newspapers that industries are growing, like this would not be a good time to get into cruise liners right now, for example, or some of the service industries have been particularly hard hit. But I think roles that can be done remotely, So going back to that question about science and medicine, there are a number of labs that have been able to create incredible online opportunities for data analysis, for big data, for being able to do to build conclusions off that, do literature reviews. There's many aspects of the science pipeline that can be done remotely. And so I think those are areas that many employers are gravitating more to because their whole teams are having to be virtual. And so they're focusing a lot on those types of activities.
Great. I have more questions, but I think maybe we'll pause there and let you continue with the presentation, and I'll bring some of those questions back in a little bit.
Awesome. So, so now we're moving on to the second challenge, but before we do that, I'd love to ask a couple of easy poll questions, or at least I think they're easy. The first one is, what proportion of people in the US find their next job through an online job board? So by this, I mean, not necessarily doing a lot of talking to people. They're finding an opportunity, they are applying with their resume and cover letter, and then they are waiting to see what happens. What percentage of people do you think are successful this way? Numbers are coming in. Bit of a race between the first few answers. Give another. Answers are still coming in. Okay, I think we settle down. So the top answer, can I just share these results? Does that work? Let me see. So the top answer was 7%. Next answer was 14%, then 28, and then 56. So the answer is 14. That is, just to show that, oops, there you go, 14%. So I think students are often very surprised by this answer. They really do think that if they follow the instructions on the application, it's all going to be great. That all they need to do is submit their resume and cover letter, and then lo and behold, they're going to get a request for an interview. And when they see this, this helps explain to them why often they never hear anything, or they get an immediate response, which is negative. And it's often quite a despondent process for them. So just to kind of look at this through the eyes of the student. And then second question I have, what is the most likely way that you're going to find, or somebody or a student will find their next job? Is it, first of all, applying to an online advertisement for a job, i.e. the one we just talked about? So you have a little bit of an answer, nobody's choosing that one. Is it the second answer, cold calling an organization or an employer? Third answer, talking to a friend, relative, or professional contact. Or finally, I hope I never have to search for a job again. I'm in that camp. Few answers still coming in. Okay, I think we're settling down. Yes, I think you have all discovered the right answer. Talking to a friend, relative, or professional contact. So really, that's why this is so important from our students' perspective, is that their most likely way of securing that first job or their next internship is because of someone they know. And I'm always say to them, you know a lot of people through your CMC connections. They're incredible. It's one of the reasons you come to CMC is the amazing alumni and parents who are there to offer support. So supportive. So just moving on here. This is the challenge that we face, not just more opportunities, but how do we connect students with alumni and parents who can
Ursula, sorry to interrupt there. I think you have some kind of text box open and it's skewing what we see. Perfect, thank you.
Is that better? Thank you. So how do we connect students with alumni and parents who can be most helpful to them? It could be providing advice. It could be answering questions. It could be providing insider information about a particular organization or a particular industry before the student applies, or it could be connecting the student with people in your Rolodex. So you may not know somebody who is working at that the student may not know somebody who's working at that organization, but they may talk to you and you may be like, oh, actually, one of my friends works there. I would be happy to connect you. So on the slide, you're going to see there's two key tools that we currently have at our disposal for putting students in contact with alumni and parents. And we call this whole process informational interviewings. Students aren't asking for a job or an internship. They're supposed to be reaching out to get advice and support. So the first way is we have an experts in residence listing. So some of you have already signed up for this. Thank you so much for doing that. It is a Qualtrics form and you get to check a box and you'd be like, yep, I would be happy to be an expert in residence and to talk to students. Okay, so the difficulty is, first of all, not many people fill out that form. So it's a relatively small proportion of our alumni and parents. Highly manual. This gets put into an Excel spreadsheet, a Google sheet, and then as a result, the information can get stale really quickly. So you may fill out that form a couple of years ago and say, yep, I'm happy to talk to students. And then a year goes by, you change jobs and you no longer feel it's the right conversation you want to be having right now. But we have no way of really updating that on a real-time basis. And then the final issue is we have no idea how many students actually end up talking to the people that they connect with. We have no visibility of that process. So that's the experts in residence listing. We've had this around since I joined CMC. It is an amazing resource. It is one of the best things we have right now, but there are definitely ways in which we can increase the number of people who are using that list to volunteer or to think out the box about other ways in which we could be connecting students with alumni and parents.
So Ursula, a couple of questions there. Can you maybe go into a little detail about the alumni and parent career contact database?
Sure. So one of the things that we provide at CMC is that from the moment a student is brought into the college, we give them access to contact details of all alumni and parents who are happy to be made visible in terms of their contact details. And so as long as they have a single sign-on account, a student can go in, they can use the search functionality for various professions and functions and organizations to find alumni and parents who might be useful contacts. But we generally encourage students to maybe either find people on the experts in residence listing or in LinkedIn, that I'll come to in a minute, and then see if they can find contact details for those individuals in the alumni and career contacts directory.
Great, just so everyone is aware, of course, the advancement database that is available to all of our alumni and has information about alumni and parents and students. We do make certain parts public to our students, and they go through a training process to reach out to these alumni that really have offered to help or specifically offered to assist our students, which is great. We did have a question come in along that line on what alumni and parents should do or should say when they're called or emailed by students in order to be of most value. So how can alumni and parents be responsive to this outreach?
Well, first of all, that's a lovely question. And I appreciate where that's coming from. I'm always very concerned that the alumni and parents don't get too overloaded with requests, and so we always try and train up the students to approach with respect and respect the person's time. Everybody is very busy, and talking to a student may not be the #1 priority for that day. And so be very clear, if they have asked for a meeting, that they should have a series of questions that they would like to ask, but that they should maybe share that with the person before the call so that the alumnus or alumna or parent has the opportunity to think through, like, do I actually have something to contribute to this conversation? Am I the right person for them to be talking to? But I think just being responsive and is such a powerful message to the student that the community cares about them. Beth, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's such a powerful piece of our community, and we'll have students who are reaching out as first years who are eager beavers, and they're really trying to get the lay of the land on an industry. So that's where it's really important to share. This is how I got into this industry. These are the players, the other companies that you might want to look at, and really just kind of giving an overall overview of each industry. And then as students get older and they're really more focused on internships and full-time work, then I think the conversation can almost become a little bit more of a, coaching session on here's how you can shine in an interview. Here's what I look for. Here's what interns have done in the past that has gone well, that hasn't gone well, and almost help the student understand if there's a potential skills gap. You might want to work on developing X or highlighting this skill on your resume because that's something that we typically look for. They're so hungry for the little nugget that might help them get into or break through to an opportunity that, I think the honesty of, hey, if you can develop this, you'll stand out more is what they're hungry for.
If I'm a first year versus if I'm a junior and I'm reaching out to alumni, I'm probably reaching out for different reasons. First years, just sheer exploration. I'm very curious about XYZ, tell me more, versus the junior of I'm looking for an internship. I think I want to go this route. How do you counsel those kind of students differently? And then how would you have our alumni and parents kind of react differently, if at all?
Yeah. So anytime a first year is coming in and they're like gung ho on the networking, we have a guide that we walk them through, and it's sort of like, here are the 3 types of questions that we think you should focus your conversation on. We talk a lot about like also just running a meeting. Like, you've asked for their time, you should be prepared to set the stage and manage your time and be prepared with questions. And then the junior year conversation, I think, is sort of, actually, Evan, can you repeat it? I got so excited about the first years. I'm off track on the juniors.
No, totally fine.
Okay.
The juniors tend to want an internship.
Yes.
They want a profession.
Yes.
They want post CMC.
Yeah. And so that's where it can be a little tricky. And that's where I think the mentoring relationship sometimes can go askew. And so I would be honest with juniors and seniors that are reaching out, hey, my firm doesn't hire undergrads, or my firm does, and the appropriate advice that comes along with that. And then I think the juniors need to just be told, yes, we can pursue this relationship, or no, we can't pursue this or I don't have an opportunity for you, but maybe my friend does, or hey, if you read this book, you'll become a little bit more of an industry expert. They're looking for the targeted advice.
Also, the most common question I hear from a junior or senior is, I know what I want to do. I know exactly where I want to work. What are the entry-level positions that I should be tracking? Like, they don't often know how to get that entry point, that on-ramp into the career. And so that can be super helpful, which is why we advise people to look at people's bios on LinkedIn. Where did they start? What internships did they get in their junior year when they were at CMC? What was their first role out of college? And maybe that would be some job titles and some job functions to consider. So I just wanted to finish up on the end of this slide that we have the experts in residence, which is a very curated relationship. And then we have the opposite of that. We have LinkedIn, which is open access to everybody. And so while LinkedIn is an amazing way to find alumni, not parents, but alumni, it is quite difficult to sometimes navigate to find the results you're looking for. And from a volunteer perspective, you never quite know who's going to contact you. So I was just talking to a student today who is wanting to go into sales and business development. And he reached out to a few alumni just this week and was amazed at how much of a positive response he got, mostly because those alumni don't often get contacted about sales and operations jobs. And so he had a wonderful response. You'll find other people who are working for big name firms who are getting, like, for example, if you work for the NFL right now, you're probably getting a lot of calls. How can I manage that and not be contacted so much? So there's a little less, there's no curation here at all. We can show people how to search for people on LinkedIn who might be useful. But again, no visibility of the connections that are made. And it's a little bit more of a student can just reach out without necessarily coming through our office and getting the guidance that they need. So I'm wondering if, Evan, would this be a good point for me to introduce Placide as kind of like somebody who is going through this process right now?
We had a question from Valet Shaw come in, and I thought, Valet, maybe we just give you the floor to ask your question if you'd like before moving to Placide.
Sure.
Valet.
Hey, can everyone see me?
Yes.
Great. So it's really, I guess, two separate questions, and they're really based on my kind of individual experience with students over the last 10, 12 years. I think question one is much more around EQ and tone, which is, how do we ensure that the students are not taking these conversations too transactionally, which is, okay, great, I'm on the phone with you. How do you help me get a job? Okay, great, thanks, bye. Because I can imagine a lot of people in this network who maybe haven't spent as much time with the students can be off-put if they have bad experiences early on. So I think, how do we figure out a way to make sure we're talking to the students so they approach it more holistically as opposed to transactionally when they start leveraging the network, I think is question one. And then question two is, over the years, a lot of the initial conversations I have students that are interested in finance, 80 to 90% of the conversation tends to be the exact same conversation with every student. And so as we think about using people's time effectively, how do we figure out ways to kind of leverage the fact that a lot of those conversations are the same and figure out a way to kind of educate students up front so that the conversations can be a bit more nuanced and detailed?
That is great feedback, Valet, and I totally recognize everything you're saying. Taking the second one first, in terms of how to be most productive with people's time, we always would welcome opportunities to put on panel discussions, to participate in the job shadow program. I would say networking tracks, but networking tracks tend to be a smaller group of students, so you're not going to reach as many people that way, but you'll definitely have a chance for more in-depth. So if that's something, I would love to follow up with you, Valet, in terms of talking about that opportunity specifically for yourself and anybody else on the call who thinks that they're having the same conversation over and over, or they have something really important that they can share with students, and we can set up on our side opportunities for that to happen and to attract and market it to as many students as possible so that they get one opportunity to hear this as opposed to reaching out individually in a way that's not particularly helpful. In terms of asking for a job or internship, Beth and I have that in big, bold letters at the top of the guide. That is a complete no-no. This is an informational interview. It's about advice. It's about asking for some support and ideas. It should never, at least the first few conversations until you have built a relationship with somebody, turn into I would like to come and work with you. How do I do that? Or can you find me a job? The one exception to that is sometimes in tech, where referrals are really welcomed and the alumni actually get paid in cash sometimes in terms of being able to attract really good candidates into the organization. So the referrals, they actually are more open to that than other industries, but I totally get that, Valet. That is not something we encourage.
Yeah, and I would just add, when a student comes into career services or they meet with the Robert Day Scholars team, we're working through let's do a mock conversation. Let's think about what your goals for this conversation are, and we can read through the instructions on the guide. Sometimes students choose to not come to career services and they talk to an older friend or they talk to a parent, and they're getting different pieces of advice. Excuse my dog. We encourage people to come see us, and we're trying to brainstorm ways that for those that aren't currently coming to see us, that we can invite them into our virtual doors and spread that message even further. And I think on the transactional piece, or in the duplicate conversation piece fillet, we have had alums who have hosted a monthly conference call who they're just getting inundated with requests all the time. And there's just a standing Sunday evening appointment. And for anyone that reaches out in that month, they get lumped into that conference call. That can be great. I think our students appreciate that, but they also want that individual time to shine and to make an impression so that you feel compelled then to push them forward. So it's a tricky balance.
Thanks, guys. I know we only have 17 minutes left, so I'm going to say, Ursula, go ahead and bring on Placide. We want to hear from students. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up after the session, but we'll get to more Q&A in a little bit. So go for it, Ursula.
Okay, so yes, it is my pleasure to introduce a student who volunteered to come and talk to you all today about what it actually feels like to be going through this informational interviewing process and what he was looking to get out of it and what experience he's had so far. So Placide Gadabazi is a senior. He's majoring in science management. I've been working with him a little, and he has very kindly offered to share a little bit of his experience. So Placide, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself properly and talk a little bit about what you've been going through the last few weeks.
Thank you, Ursula. So my name is Placide Gatabazi. I'm a senior CMC science management with a data science sequence. And yeah, I'm also an international student from Rwanda. So like 2017, that was my first time stepping my steps in this country. And it's been good so far. So this past summer, I remember almost close to the end of my internship, that's when I kind of realized that whatever I was doing, I wouldn't really like doing it later on after graduation. And I reached out to Ursula and I was like, okay, so I have this interest in data science. I want to do something in data science, but then I really don't know if I should go forward and just do search for those opportunities or just apply for graduate programs in the data science. So she gave me a list of like CMC alums that are in the space or that do something close to data science. And that's what I've been doing in these days. So I literally just made an Excel sheet with different names of people that are doing data science. And then I started reaching out to those people. And mainly what I'm looking for is just know what data scientists do there or how they got to this level where they are at the moment, because you can think that maybe like when they went here at CMC, maybe they didn't have a data science sequence. So like, how did they now get into these data science positions? Did they actually need to go through graduate programs or other trainings, or they just learn through whatever they have or whatever they're doing through just internal promotions in their jobs? And so like, I just started like reaching out and sending out emails. A good number of them actually responded, and I've been just having like those informational interview calls, and it's been great because now at least I know that the majority of them, they didn't go through the whole graduate programs, so they just kind of grew into the role that they're doing at the moment. So in a way, all this like reaching out has been really helpful in terms of like now making that choice for me easier. If I want to do data science, I was kind of conflicted with, do I go the graduate school or master's route, or should I just find opportunities in the space already and then try to grow up into the role, try to grow up into becoming a data scientist? So that's what like all this course has been up just for. So learning about all those, see what are different like projects that data scientists, or how do they work in different other teams. So these courses have been just like helpful in that space. And also because I'm a senior now looking for full-time opportunities, trying to figure out, now I know that maybe I want to be in tech, but then like in this tech, like what kind of roles should I be looking for? After explaining myself, after talking about my interests to the CMC alum, they kind of guide me towards what they think should be maybe a good starting point. So I've been really enjoying these calls, and so far they're going so well. And sometimes, like when we're talking, they're like, "Oh, we actually have this kind of role open, and I'll be happy to give you a referral." And then I just apply through the kind of channel. As you saw the poll, the first poll question that Ursula like posted, like 14%. So like that makes so much sense on why like in the past few years I've been sending out my applications but never hearing back. So yeah, it's been going well. I don't know if anyone has questions, but yeah, I'll be here just to answer them.
Thanks, Placid.
Thanks, Placid.
No problem.
Hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavor of how students can make use of this incredibly valuable and help keep them on the right track so they don't go down a track that they think they should be doing and get a graduate degree unnecessarily at all of that expense and effort without realizing that actually that they didn't need to do that. They could have gained some really great on-the-job experience instead. All right. Evan, shall I move on?
Go ahead and keep going, and we'll do some Q&A at the end.
Cool. So this is kind of like a little bit of a summary of what Beth and I have been talking about today. You know, we're always looking for volunteers to work directly with students, to offer advice, answer questions, make connections, open up Rolodexes. That really is, we have so many connections with recruiters, but it's these extra connections that really, I think, make CMC so special. We often get asked, what are the areas in which we need the most help? And I think it's safe to say that we have the big three largely covered: financial services, consulting, big tech. We have so many connections there. We have so many alumni paving the way that there's a really nice pipeline of opportunities in those three areas. The ones you see on the slide, healthcare as well as medicine, science as well as environment, public policy, and that also can include research and think tanks, as well as people just wanting to work in a fun and vibrant environment such as creative and entertainment. Those are areas that do not recruit on campus. We do not necessarily have a strong pipeline of students going into these areas. And so it's much harder for students to navigate individual pathways and find those opportunities. So these are areas where we feel there's a particular gap in those kind of personal connections that we can offer. However, we're always loving to hear from alumni and parents across any industry, any way that your expertise and knowledge might be helpful. So if any of these resound with you, if you either yourself or you know somebody who you think actually might be really helpful, please pop it in the chat and I'll follow up with you afterwards.
We love when you volunteer other people as well. So definitely put those in. Yes, give us names.
We love it when that happens. Okay, so the last thing I just wanted to talk about was in the last few minutes, I would love to hand over to Connie to discuss engage.cmc.edu, which I believe could be a real game changer in this area as we gradually roll it out. So Connie, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Ursula. I agree. The new platform is called engage.cmc, and it's a simple online software that will create a social network for the CMC community. It's a place where our faculty, staff, students, parents, and alumni will be able to connect and engage with each other. Our parents and alumni will have the opportunity to volunteer, including to offer mentorship and support to our students. A great feature of the platform is that the students and the alumni will be able to search for their mentors that meet their specific criteria, such as their industry or their major. Once you're registered, you'll also be able to share stories, photos, view the directory, connect with other alumni and parents, and of course, connect with our students. When we fully launch the new platform, you'll receive an email inviting you to register. We are preparing to launch in January to the entire community, with some volunteer groups joining prior to that. I look forward to connecting with everybody. And now I will turn it back to Evan.
Thanks, Connie. Someone earlier put in the chat about a concern about some of our databases and different softwares that we use. We do use Handshake, which I'm not going to go into because I don't know it very well. Ursula knows it better than I, but that's a very popular, very strong platform. And then, of course, Razorjet is Blackbaud, which is our CRM. And then this new Engage platform will actually eliminate some of those, and apologies for my background noise as well. Oh, the Zoom world. But we, this will actually eliminate some of the other pieces that we're using, the Excel and whatnot, to get rid of the experts in residence pieces. And sorry, I can hear her more than I can hear myself right now. So it's a great platform. We're getting very excited to launch it. And it should really help with how we track and how we engage both alumni, parents, and students. So thanks. Ursula, turn it over.
I would agree with that in terms of this is going to bring us into the 21st century, where alumni and parents can actually manage their own profiles. They can use their LinkedIn profile as a way to log in, so they can automatically bring in the information that they would like to share publicly in this platform as well. It's a way to let us know directly in terms of updates that you have, and to join different communities and express different ways to volunteer and engage, both with your peer groups, with alumni and with parents, but also directly with students. So we'll be bringing students onto the platform last, because we want to make sure that there is a really vibrant, robust alumni community and parent community already formed, and that the students can tap into that. But we really see this is why it is a joint implementation between alumni and parent relations and career services, because we both see it as being a solution to opportunities that we both face, and to bring the communities much closer together. So I'm really excited, and I can't wait for the new year to roll around when we do the full implementation.
Wow. Stay tuned for more there. Anything else, Ursula, before you go into some questions?
No, that was the end of my presentation. So I'm open for business, as is Beth and Evan and Connie. Any questions you may have?
Let's stop sharing so we can all go back and see all of each other. Fantastic. All right, we have just a couple minutes for questions, so feel free to put something in the chat. Something that did pop up earlier, Ursula, was the difference between talk maybe about the sponsored internship and experiences program, paid versus unpaid, and how parents and alumni help with that.
Sure. So the way the sponsored internships and experiences program is a funding program. So it enables students who would otherwise not be able to afford to do a summer internship or experience, for them to be able to apply via a budget for funding to help them have the summer that they would like to be able to afford to have. Many of the internships are unpaid or low paid. Often they're in difficult places to reach when we have international travel, and it takes extra money to be able to fly out there to take advantage of the opportunity. So that's the funding program. In parallel to that, the career coaches are working with students to figure out what's the best way to spend your summer. What is the way to productively spend that 3 months or so? Is it doing a proper internship with a supervisor and a job description and gaining skills? Is it having an experience like the Apple Fellowship, where you go and have an experience and write about it with the support of a literature professor? Is it that you're going to travel and kind of explore a little bit and figure out who you are and who you want to be? So there are many different ways in which students might want to spend their summers productively. The sponsored internship and experiences program enables students to be able to afford to do that. So there is a big operation in the spring to match students who have come in to say, hey, I have this opportunity that I would like to do. how can we best fund that? So we're always looking for people who would like to, that program is entirely funded by individuals who similar to the ones who are on the call today, alumni and parents who are providing some resources to be able to help students do that. So from a donor perspective, we are incredibly grateful. We could not run that program without the donors' support. And if anybody has any questions about how to provide into that, then Michelle Chamberlain or anybody on the Advanced Middle Development team, or you could reach out to me and Beth, and we would be happy to forward any offers of help that way. I hope that answers the question, but please let me know if there's a follow-up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Each year we sponsor, I believe, somewhere between 500 and 600 internships, which means not only do we help our students find those, we help fund them, especially if there isn't funding available. I know, Scott, Tori, you mentioned that you usually sponsor a number of students. You have issues with not paying them. Makes total sense. If they are paid through the company, then they are obviously assisted through career services to get that role, but they wouldn't be paid through the pot of funding that we have, which is all from philanthropy, by the way. So thank you all who support our Sponsored Internship and Experiences program. It's just a very unique program in higher ed, and the fact that we offer so many. I think at one point, Ursula, was somewhere around 80 or 85% of students had an internship.
By the time they graduate, it's over 90%.
Over 90%. So
it's so unusual for a liberal arts college. That's running about 15% higher than on the average liberal arts. It's one of the top ones in the country. And on like almost half of our first years, even during this past summer, took advantage of that funding and had. So to have first years, I think many colleges offer this type of program for junior summer in order to launch people into their real world experiences. We take a little different approach, and we're like, the earlier you can start to gain experiences, the better, to explore, to start building up that resume, so that by the time you become a junior, hopefully there are a lot of paid opportunities that are opening up to you. So that's the messaging that we share with our students.
Great. Ursula and Beth, thank you so much. Connie, thank you for talking about our new Graduate platform. It is 5 o'clock. I recognize everyone's time is precious. Feel free to add anything else into the chat. If you need to go, I say thank you. And we hope to see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. when we talk about the President's Initiative on Anti-Racism and the Black Experience in America with Nure Gray, our Associate Vice President and Chief Civil Rights Officer. I also invite you, if you want to stay on and ask a couple more questions, we're happy to stay on for a few more minutes. So go ahead and say goodbye, sign off. We'll pause for just a few seconds while people get situated. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye and say thank you. And then we'll address any last questions. If you do want to help, put your name into the chat. We'll make sure that we follow up in due time. Thank you, Sauls. Good to see you.
Thank you, Placide.
Thanks, Placide. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tony. Working at Handshake. Appreciate it. Another handshake for it. Okay. John McDowell, who is on the call, I think still did ask about public policy. We have so many alumni in the public policy sphere. Why do we think that's currently an issue?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that one. So I think it's tricky for two reasons. One is people tend to move around a little bit more in public policy roles. And so one firm that they're at might be, really open to hiring college students or CMCers, and then they move firms and it may not be the same moving into that new firm. And then it's also tricky, any of the industries that don't have resources or hire in such large quantities where there's incentive to come to campus and to do on-campus recruiting, it tends to be a little bit more hit or miss because the process isn't as uniform as the banks, the consulting firms, and even some of the big tech that Ursula was referring to. So the process is just a little murkier. But our alumni are very eager and our students are very eager. And so we're hoping to to rely on the connections.
I would also add that public policy is often mostly geographically based out of DC, or at least that's where a lot of our alumni are who are working in public policy. And students have very strong reaction to DC. They either love DC or they're like, I'm not sure that that's the environment I want to work in. So they're always looking for like other alternatives, and being able to highlight think tanks or research opportunities or ways in which they can use their amazing writing skills and research skills in different ways through different, and they often are very mission driven. And so trying to connect them with the right missions and with the things that kind of set them alight where they can use their skills all over the country can be super powerful.
Morgan Belts asked a question about any need for anything, any specific region. I was going to write back and I was going to say all regions are needed, especially in these times, but I didn't want to speak for you guys, so I didn't put that in. Morgan's in Portland. We have, of course, 19 chapters, 2 international, 17 domestic. So my thought is we pull from where our students come from, which was chapter related, and we need help in all these regions. So, but I will turn over to Ursula and Beth to give the official answer.
I totally agree. As I'm talking to the senior class, what started off as I want to only work in New York City, LA, or San Francisco is rapidly turning into, I'll go wherever the good opportunity is, right? They are learning that maybe for the next year or two, they need to, the experience is going to be more important than the location. And so they are open to any destination, as long as there's kind of a city attached to it, but there's some kind of nightlife and social life.
And this could mean also that they're moving back home, which is not something that our students really have thought about probably since 08, 09, when maybe that was the only option they had. In this case, with COVID, maybe they need to for some reason, or they don't have an office to go to, so they might be looking at more opportunities where they're coming from. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Any other questions from this group? Anything I missed? Great. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll hopefully see you tomorrow at 3. Have a good night, everyone.